Hi guys, today's video is going to show you how to do the 4 skills required of you by the College Board for your AP Calculus exam. The 4 skills required are that you can graph a function, find the zeros of a function, remember the zeros of a function are the roots, solutions, and x-intercepts, take the derivative of a function at a particular number, so plug in something like find f prime of 2, and evaluate an integral from a to b of f of x dx, which we know is called the definite integral. So I'm going to go through these skills and a few other skills on the TI-89. I have my TI-89 here. If you don't have your own TI-89 at home, that's okay. Just make sure you take copious notes and you can practice when you get to class. If you do have an 89, please make sure you get that out and can follow along. So I'm going to start by turning on my calculator, and you'll see it brings you to the apps screen. You don't really need anything on this screen right now. What I would recommend you do is hit the home button and clean your calculator up, get it ready to go. So in order to do that from the home screen, I'm going to show you the F6 menu, which is the cleanup menu. Now if you look across the top of your screen here, it'll tell you all of the menus, and over here is F6 for cleanup. Now F6 is also above F1 over here in blue. So if something's in blue, you have to use the blue button to get to it. So hit second and F1, which actually brings you to F6, and this menu shows up. So the first option here, highlighted, number 1, is clear A to Z. That clears all the stored variables from your calculator. The second option, number 2, is new problem. That will tell the calculator you're starting a new problem. So we want to do both of those. You want to clear all the variables and start a new problem. So I like to do number 1 first. Now it is highlighted, so you can hit enter if you want, or you can hit the number 1 and it'll ask you if you actually do want to clear them, and you'll hit enter again to say that you want to clear them. Now it looks like nothing happened on the calculator. That's okay. Now you're going to go and hit second again and F6 for the cleanup menu, and you can arrow down and highlight new problem and hit enter, or hit the number 2, and at the bottom of your screen it'll say new prob. You have to hit enter again, and it clears everything on your home screen and tells the calculator you're doing a new problem. I would recommend you do this every time you start something new on your calculator. Hit clear, and that will clear the bottom of the screen so that your cursor is flashing here and it's ready to accept anything you want it to type. The first skill I want to review is graphing. So let's graph this function. So to graph, you're going to need to go to all of the green things above the F buttons. So we have Y equals window and graph. And since they're in green, you're going to need the green button in order to access them. So I'm going to graph this function, this parabola, x squared minus x minus 6. And in order to do that, I need to go into the equation editor, which is the y equals. It's in green above F1. So if you hit the green diamond and then F1, it'll bring you to a place where you can type a function. I happen to have one in here already. That's fine. You can use your arrow buttons to highlight it, arrow up to highlight it, and then if you hit clear, it'll clear it out. Now your cursor is at Y1, which is where you're going to type in the equation. And you can just hit enter, and it'll bring your cursor down to the bottom of the screen. Now I'm going to go ahead and type in this equation. There's no square button. You're going to have to use the caret key, which is right here, to use exponents. So the x is below the home button, so you would type x caret 2 for x squared, then subtract x, and then subtract 6. And once you've typed it into the bottom of the screen, if you hit enter, you'll see it'll project it at the top of the screen in the Y1 spot. Notice it has pretty print, which means that the squared looks like an actual exponent. It's not exactly as you typed it. It looks as if you had written it. Now you want to see what this looks like. I want to show you the window option. If you hit the green button, diamond, and F2 for window, you'll notice I have preset numbers in here. But let's say I wanted to put the numbers in on my own. Let's say I wanted to look on this side, on the left-hand side, from -5 to the right-hand side 5. So I would tell the calculator x min, that tells you the left boundary, -5, hit enter, it'll bring you down to the next option, x max, which is your right boundary of your graph. So let's say I want to look until x is 5. Your x scale, I always like to make 1. That tells you what every tick mark is worth. So 1, enter. And then for my y min and my y max, let's just pick numbers. I'm going to pick -7, hit enter, 7, enter, and then my y scale, I'm going to make a 1 because I want every tick mark to be 1. Again, you can make these numbers appropriate for the problem. Just like xmin and xmax are the left and right boundary, ymin and ymax are the bottom and the top boundary. After you do that, you can go and get a picture of your graph. So you hit diamond and F3 for graph. Now my screen has a bunch of dots on it. If you have them, great. If you don't, that's fine also. But from there, you can now see that that parabola is graphed perfectly for you. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, -5, +5, -7 to +7. Now, if you want, from this screen, you can change your view of that graph. I want to show you the zoom feature. If you look at the top of the screen, zoom is labeled as F2. So from this particular screen, the graph screen, if you hit F2, you have a whole bunch of different ways you can zoom. I usually like to choose number 6, which is zoom standard. What that will do is give you a window that is -10 in the X direction over here, +10 in the X direction there, -10 in the Y direction here, and +10 in the Y direction there. So -10 to 10 and -10 to 10. So I'm going to hit the 6 because zoom standard is 6. Hit that. It'll automatically regraph everything, and you'll notice when it draws it, it's a little bit zoomed out. So that's how you would graph a function. And you can get a whole bunch of information from the graph of a function. Now I want to show you how to find the zeros of a function. So I'm going to find the zeros of this function right here, x cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x minus 6. And the way we're going to do that is from the home screen. So hit your home button. And on the home screen, remember there are all of these tabs and menus at the top. We've already done F6 cleanup and we're ready to go with a new problem. But now I want to explore F2 algebra. So hit F2 and the algebra menu comes up. You can do a whole bunch of things on the TI-89, but the thing you have to know how to do for the AP exam is zeros, and zeros is option 4. Again, you can arrow down to highlight it and hit enter, and that will put the zeros command at the bottom of the screen, or you could have hit the number 4 to get it. Now once you have the zeros at the bottom of the screen, the way you enter the zero command, zeros and the parentheses shows up already. Now you'll have to type the equation, which I want you to use this one. You tell the calculator what to solve for by using a comma and then an X, and then you close the command. If you need parentheses at all when typing in your equation, you need to add those in all on your own. This parenthesis you can't use because it goes with the one at the end. So let me show you. The first parenthesis is given, so I'll type in x cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x minus 6. Now I'll tell the calculator what to solve for. So comma is kind of like the equal sign, and then you're going to put the x. The x is what the calculator is going to solve for, and then use the closed parenthesis, which is above the 8. That first parenthesis and that last parenthesis are the beginning and the end of the zeros command. Then hit enter. And you'll see it may take your calculator a little bit longer than mine, but you'll see it gave you 3 numbers, -3, -1, and 0. And if I were to have graphed this cubic, those are the zeros, the roots, the solutions, or the x-intercepts of this particular cubic. And we have a lot of uses for those in AP Calc. So that's that second function that you'll need to know how to do. The third function you'll need to know how to do on your calculator is how to take the derivative and plug in a number. So for derivatives, I'm going to work with this function. What they'll ask you to do on the AP exam is things where you'll have to find the derivative, plug in a number. It may be written as find f prime of the number. It may say find the slope of the function at a particular number. But a basic example is finding f prime of 1. So your calculator does derivatives. What I'll do to get to this part is clear the bottom line. Like we talked about before, I'll get a new problem by hitting second F6, and I will clear everything out of my screen with another new problem. Now for the derivative function, there is an italic D. I didn't draw it that way, but the italic D can be found on your calculator above the 8. So above the 8, it's in blue. It's kind of hard to see on your screen, so look on your calculator. And since it's in blue, to get it, you'll have to hit second and 8. Now a parenthesis comes up, just like it did with zeros, and the command will require the equation, comma, x, because it needs to know again what your variable is. Close the parentheses. Then this bar is the same as this bar over here. On your calculator, this button is not an absolute value bar. If we need absolute value, I will talk about it in class. but this bar means plug in to x. So it's the evaluated at bar. So after you type in your equation, you'll say evaluate the derivative when x equals the number involved in the problem. So in our case, we'll put in a 1. So let's type in the equation after the parenthesis. So here's my parenthesis, 4x to the 5th minus 3x to the 4th plus 2x. I'll put a comma to tell it I'm done typing the equation. Tell it to use x as my variable, so I hit an x. Close the parentheses. Then I need to tell it what to plug into the derivative. So this will take the derivative for me. I want it to evaluate my derivative, so I push the evaluated at bar. It puts the bar on the bottom of the screen. And then literally x, the equal sign, and in this particular problem I'm asking you to find f prime of 1, so you'll tell the calculator 1. Hit enter, and f prime of 1 then is 10. What your calculator is doing is physically taking the derivative, like this. F prime of x would be equal to 20x to the 4th minus 12x cubed plus 2. And then your calculator is plugging in the 1 for you, where you're going to get 1 to the 4th minus 12 times 1 cubed plus 2. And it's spitting out the answer of 10 for you. So you can skip doing all this work. Now I know this sounds great, but remember, everything that you do on the calculator, you have to be able to do by hand on the AP exam. So the last skill I need to go over with you is how to take a definite integral. So a definite integral is a problem where you have to evaluate an integral with bounds, just like this one. So I'm going to show you how to type this one into the calculator. So let's clear and get a new problem. Second and F1 brings me to the F6 menu. The second option gives me a new problem. You can hit clear. Now, you guys can do this problem by raising the power and dividing by the new power. So this would be 5x to the 5th over 5, 3x to the 4th over 4, minus 2x cubed over 3. And then you would do eyeglasses on that. Looks like a lot of work and a lot of typing. But you won't have to do that on your graphing calculator. You'll use the integral symbol, type the equation, tell it it's a dx problem, then tell it the lower bound and the upper bound, close the command, and it'll spit out the answer, like this. Above the 7 is the integral symbol, so you'll hit the blue and 7, since the integral's in blue. It spits out the first parenthesis. Type the equation, or the integrand, into the calculator, 5x to the 4th plus 3x cubed minus 2x squared. Finish the equation with a comma. Tell the calculator x, so type in x. Now here comes the new part. We haven't done this yet. Usually we put a comma at a parenthesis at this point and finish the command. Because this has a lower and an upper bound, LB, lower bound, UB, upper bound, lower bound, upper bound. We have to tell the calculator what they are. So comma, the lower bound of the problem is -2, so I'll type that next, comma, the upper bound, 3. Close the parenthesis, so I've now typed that, and hit enter. And your calculator does all the eyeglasses for you. So this integral is equal to 3605 over 12. Now it gives it to you as a fraction. You can always get a decimal if you do one of two things. You could arrow up and hit enter. What that will do is when you've highlighted this number and get it back at the bottom of your screen and hit enter, it'll put your answer there. What you can do is hit diamond and enter, and it gives you a decimal approximation of your solution. So my solution is 300.41, and I'm going to round to 7. Remember, on the AP exam, it's always 3 decimal places. You also can, in a problem, put a decimal at the end of a number. So just to show you that, I'm going to hit clear. I'm going to go up, arrow up, and highlight the equation we've already typed for today. And I'm going to backspace, and after this upper bound, I'm going to put a decimal point and close the parentheses. When I do that, you'll see that decimal shows up as my upper bound. It automatically spits out a decimal answer for me. It'll really depend on the problem on if you'll need a fraction form or a decimal form. So those are the 4 skills you'll need to know for the AP exam on the graphing calculator. Feel free to watch this video as many times as you'd like to review the skills, and we'll go over them again in class as we need them.